Hustle Town. Hey, welcome to Instant Ramen, guys. Thank y'all for showing up tonight. As always, OSG, old soccer guy. Hey, tonight I've got Dynamic Foxtrot, the Andreas, with me tonight. How you doing, brother? What's going on?
Pretty good. Excited for the new season.
Oh, man, and these interviews that we're going to do, man. Instant Ramen obviously is a little different from Noodle Time. Noodle Time is about dynamo, dash, or dose. Instant Ramen, we like to explore off and venture off our opponents and ask them, who are you and what are you going to bring to us, and are we going to fit? Is this going to be a fun match? All this good stuff. We like to explore our opponents, learn our opponents. If you don't know your opponents, then I don't know what you're doing. You're just kind of we're just boring, whatever. But that's Instant Ramen. But so let's take you into the next. Man, we have St. Louis soccer news, and we have Chris here with us tonight. And Chris, how you doing, sir? Thank you very much for joining us. Please say hello and tell us about yourself, brother.
I'm good, fellas. First off, I appreciate the invite. Happy to talk to you guys, and I'm a fan. I've watched the podcast before and checked it out prior to our match, a couple matches with you guys last year. So excited to talk the upcoming matchup and the upcoming season. So ready to get into it.
Well, that leads into obviously last year 3-0 you, 1-1 us, but you listened to us. So I'm kind of curious, man. What'd you think?
Well, the thing, in talking about the team or talking about your podcast, I love. I enjoyed it. I like the perspective of getting the other side's view on our team, and I think that's very helpful for most MLS fans. Is you can get all the Homer stuff that you want and read all the stuff that's local, but having outside views is always helpful, and it's interesting to see what other people think about your team. And you guys certainly did that when you were kind of previewing and post gaming the matches last year. So it's always interesting, and the games last year were obviously the first one was fun. I was there, and it was a pretty enjoyable time for us. And the second one, honestly, the Dynamo outplayed us, and we got a late goal to salvage a point, which was lucky for us, and a good result on the road in a hard place to play.
It was, you mentioned you were at the first game, so were most of us. I was not, unfortunately, there, but I'm part of the supporters group that did attend the game, and they went to it, and they were so disappointed they had a great time while they were there. They got to enjoy everything that was kind of close around to the stadium. They were able to stay close to the stadium. They enjoyed it. And they recommend going again, and they might even attend next Tuesday just for the fun of it, just because they enjoyed it so much. So appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for taking care of us, because they actually met up with some of y'all supporters and after the game, and just enjoyed themselves for a little bit before they separated and went on their own way. So it's like great atmosphere. Enjoyed it, and I hear it's a great town for the soccer atmosphere as well.
Yeah, it's this is one of the historic soccer capitals of the country and soccer cities, and especially last year, it was about 50 years of pent up frustration of not having a team and getting close a couple times and never quite having the right ownership group to get an MLS franchise, and finally putting together the right stadium package, right ownership group, and everything that we needed to finally get it done. And MLS wanted a team here for a long time, and they were kind of waiting for us to get our act together. And luckily enough, we did. And finally, we were fortunate enough to get a team. And you could sense this in the city, just this sense of relief of, hey, we finally got what we wanted and what we wanted for a very long time. And I'm super psyched to hear that your supporters group had a good time. The stadium is amazing. The atmosphere around it is college football-esque, in my opinion. It's just, everybody's there super early, hours and hours and hours ahead, because the stadium is downtown. There's a lot of stuff going on, block parties. Two of the supporters groups, the St. Louligans and STL Santos, which is the Hispanic supporters group, both have block parties, basically a block apart from each other, right? I mean, so it's, you bounce from one to the other, you go get food over at Santos and you come back and drink at Louligans or vice versa. And so, and that's right across the street from the stadium. So yeah, it's an awesome atmosphere, and they have a lot of things planned for this year to expand it and grow it, just because last year was year one. So you can always improve on that. So
Well, of course, man, exciting times, exciting. So let's just talk about last season, man. I mean, last season, it was what 17-5-12, so that's what 5 draws and 12 losses, 17 wins, finishing first Western Conference, all the hype, and it was like, where did this come from? An expansion team and new owner, like nobody expected this come out of the woodworking, like boom. And uh, I don't know if if I heard it from y'all use the word genius, or if I just said it was genius, but whoever put this together was friggin' genius, and it just the way they built it and from scratch. So, I mean, just describe about last season and tell us about last season. Then Andreas, compliment.
A dream. Last season was beyond anybody's wildest expectations here. Nobody could have ever expected that. Everybody made a big deal about at the end of the year how many national pundits and everybody picked us to finish last or wooden spoon, and this franchise had a lot going for it. They flip flop with Charlotte basically. And got an extra year to get ready and prepare. And one of the things that's been mentioned and talked about was the fact that our next pro team was ready the year before. And a lot of those guys came over and played with the next pro team, and Klaus was here early and Berkey was here early and Lubin was here early. And a lot of those guys, there's a lot more to becoming an athlete in a town where you're going to play than just on field. You got to get your family moved. You got to find a place to live. You got to figure out, where do I eat, and all that stuff that goes along with just living life. And the fact that they were able to kind of get all that stuff out of the way the year before and then get used to playing with each other, form those relationships. That's why I really think it was the big reason they started 5-0, because they were out ahead of everybody. They had hit the ground running. The only couple guys that were late to camp, you could tell, Jabulo Blom, who's our center defensive midfielder, was like the last guy into camp. And, he struggled early to kind of adapt to everything. And so it was definitely a case where, we hit the ground running. We had that early start. And I think we all kind of kept waiting for teams like LAFC, Seattle to eventually catch us and pass us. And I think a lot of the league expected that too. And the longer it went and they didn't, it was like, okay, maybe we are a legitimate contender. Maybe you are going to get a playoff spot, which was just a dream just to get into the playoffs. And then it turned into, maybe we'll wind up as getting a home playoff series. And then you wind up winning the West. And so nobody from the organization down to the fan base expected that, but it was an awesome first season. It was beyond what we could have ever hoped for. And now it's time to build and look for, season 2. So yeah, it was incredible, and it was something that we'll never forget.
No, the one thing that I have to say about like that entire run was just like the fact that it never stopped. It's insane. Like, you just look back at all the expansion teams, or just like their teams like going in their first year, and it's just really something unimaginable. Like, just the way that St. Louis just kept going and winning and getting results on the road, and just pretty much just finishing first in the West in the first year. It's like Chris just said it. It's unthinkable, and it's just insane that they've been like for so long and indeed like in the Supporters Shield race in the first year, like unheard of. And they had the chance, but like it's still impressive. Like, even though they didn't win it, they still finished top of the West. And I was fully expecting to like a run against them in the playoffs as soon as we qualified. So like credit, like it's not like even enough for these guys, because they just did everything so well, and like it's just like unheard of, and barely something that doesn't really happen often.
Well, there's a follow-up question to that.
Sorry, OSG.
No, my bad. My shoot. I should have let you just talk, bro.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the only one thing I was going to add to that is the team itself. When the organization started, and I've talked about this elsewhere, but they're smart enough to know, hey, we're going to sell out every single game. We're not worried about that. It's going to be a crazy environment. I mentioned on the DPP podcast, which you guys are also part of, that there was a 65,000 person waiting list for season tickets, and they were only going to sell 18,500. And now that waiting list is over 100,000. So they knew they were going to sell out. They're going to sell out every game this year. They're going to sell out every game next year and for the foreseeable future. So they didn't need to go out and sign aging stars, guys with names, just to put people in seats. And that was a big thing, I think, that made a big difference is they said, okay, here's the style we're going to play. They got a coach to coach that style in Bradley Carnell. Lutz Pfannenstiel, who's the sporting director, said, this is the style I want. I'm going to get a coach to find that, to play that style. And then they went out and built a team to play the style. They didn't necessarily need to get, big names to fill seats. And so I think that really helped is that they had a team concept. And I think that made a big difference in year one. So sorry, OSG, go ahead.
No, and then getting just forget what I was going to say, and then getting that year, like you said, but prior in Next Pro, a build up of playing together and building that chemistry and that camaraderie as a team and playing that style and that type of soccer. Y'all weren't a joke in Next Pro, and they mentioned it when teams were playing y'all. Hey, these some of these guys will be first teamers next year, and da 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 da. But it was looking at it from a home perspective, it was a great build up and great training and great just something just to prepare your expansion team. And then what you did something that nobody else has ever done before. And it's going to be hard to repeat as well, unless you're in the NWSL and you're Bay FC, who's over there just signing everybody in left and right and just going to be friggin' world smashers in day one. And they hadn't even played a friggin' game yet. But,
Mhm.
so I digress. I'm sorry. So last season,
that's
man,
okay.
you had who was your standout players that kept this team together and built this team? I basically your core to keep y'all in this run before obviously your season ended.
It's you can go right up the spine. Everybody talks in soccer how important the spine of your team is. It's kind of the equivalent to having strong up the middle in baseball, like catcher,
Yeah.
middle infield, center fielder. It's the same thing in soccer, and the spine of this team was you had Roman Berkey in the back, a guy who was that signing was very criticized as to why your big signing is going to be a goalkeeper, why you're going to spend all this money on a keeper. You don't do that in MS or MLS. Worked out. He was goalkeeper of the year. He's the captain of the team. He's the face of one of the faces of the franchise. You couldn't have asked for more from him. And then you go right up the spine. Tim Parker, who you guys are very familiar with, had basically a career resurgence, played phenomenally, had the first goal in city history, and just had an incredible season, and has also become very ingrained in the city, and people love him, and he has his own beer here now, and it's like he's one of the top guys and fan favorites. And then you go up, keep going up, you go to Edward Leuven, a guy who never quite found his footing in the Bundesliga. And was as important as anybody on the team as far as just the overall style of play. He's their field general. He is their guy who is going to distribute. He has every tool that you would want out of a midfielder. And I firmly believe that had he not gotten hurt and missed a bunch of time, he would have been in the very, very top of the MVP voting. I think he was that important for this team. And he's a guy that, is just central to everything they do. And then up top, you have Joe Klaus, who kind of took the league by storm early on, and unfortunately suffered an injury that kept him out for the majority of the season. But if you look at his production for when he was playing, he's as good as anybody there is in the league up top. And if we can get a whole season out of him, that would be very, very nice. So it was his first severe injury he's ever had in his career. And hopefully he can avoid that because, we are going to need the production out of him and a dinner I know I'm sure we'll talk about. So the spine of the team was really the important part.
Right. So segue into kind of the things you just mentioned was injuries, which is a question that a lot of people have asked, and I'm sure you've heard 100 times now, and you're probably annoyed with it. Please don't punch me through the screen.
No, that's okay.
Expansion team, brand new season, first team coming out of the bricks and just knocking it off the charts and just blasting off and taking it and just not giving it up. I think what you never went below fourth. If you did, it was for less than 24 hours or whatever.
1 week.
Yep. 1 week, and then came back to fourth. And then, so you were on top. You held the top. You didn't give it up. If you did, you fought for it back. Uh, but towards the end of the season, you kind of sound, coming back down the hill, and then obviously the playoff, and then it just fell apart. So, what was it? These are not my words. This is someone else's words. Was it a fluke, or was it genius, like I said earlier, who built the team correctly? And I think it was that was a correct season that y'all just had from my perspective. Or what was it? Or did the injuries kill you, or just run out of gas? Yeah.
I think a little bit of it was just running out of gas. I think they might have gotten caught up a little bit in record chasing. They were a win away from breaking the all-time points record for an expansion team. They set the wins record. They had, they were the first team ever as an expansion team to win their conference. Had they won one more game, they would have basically set every expansion record ever. And it would have been kind of undeniably almost the best expansion franchise, expansion season of all times. Right. And it's still one of the best. Now, did they get caught up in that a little bit? Maybe. They did not play well in the last two regular season games against Vancouver and Seattle, I believe, were the last two. And then SKC? Obviously, well, SKC was the playoff series.
Did you play him in the? Sorry, didn't y'all play him at the end of the season as well?
Towards the end of the season, yes. Okay. If I remember correctly, the last two games were Vancouver and Seattle, I believe.
Okay.
And Seattle came in here and just completely dominated. They looked, that was the last game of the year. The game before that was in Vancouver, a game that they looked kind of semi-interested in playing. They did not look comfortable on the turf up there at all. And that's a weird place to play as far as the surface and the lighting. And, they're reliant on moving the ball quickly, and the ball rolls different on turf than it does on grass. Everybody knows that. And they look like a team that had never played on that surface before, definitely. And so the last two games of the season, I think they looked tired. And then you go and you start the playoffs, and you have basically out of 4 halves, you played a pretty decent second half in the second game. And other than that, they didn't play well. And I think I think a lot of those guys, this is the first time around in the MLS, and I don't think they realize that, hey, there's another level you have to go up to when the playoffs start, just like any other professional sports in America.
Oh yeah.
You can have a great regular season, but if you don't elevate, everybody else is going to, and you need to do that. And so that's something that hopefully that they've learned this year, or from last year, that they'll take into this year, is that, hey, you don't have to kill yourself in order to win the cup. I said before on the DPP show, both the finalists last year for the cup were 3 seeds. You don't have to win your division to win the cup, right, or even be in the final. So, I think hopefully that they learn from that. And yeah, I do think it was just running guys in the ground a little bit too much. And I've made the point that, like, Roman Berkey played 32 out of the 34 MLS games last year. That's too many. It's way too many. So, yeah. And he even talked about how tired he was, because much like Houston, our summers are miserable, and we have, heat and humidity and all the weather. And so, we had, bad weather in the wintertime, and then in the summer it's miserable, and that wears you out. So definitely think it was a little bit of exhaustion for sure.
Yeah.
No, yeah. The thing about rosters, it's just insane, how many competitions we have to play now. And it just goes to show, it can be just a podcast episode in itself, just the discussion for cap space and all that. But yeah, it just adds more credit to what St. Louis has done, because just maintaining that consistency, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting to see or to hear when you have fans of other teams or podcasters like you guys of other teams, and because I have heard the whole, they got out to that hot start because nobody else was ready, and then they just coasted, and they weren't that good the rest of the year. I mean, you play who you play, and they didn't play some of the teams from the East that were really good, but I mean, Cincinnati came in here and we beat them 5-1. So MLS is a crazy league, and you never know who's going to beat who on any given night, and you can only play who's in front of you. And so yes, right. I mean, I think this year, they have to look at, okay, are we going to be better against some of the better West teams? We did not play good against Seattle. We played a pretty solid, even match with LAFC for most of the game out there. And the first time we played them in LA, and then they wound up getting a couple late goals and beating us. And then we played them to a draw here. That was a pretty even match. So I think this year what we're hoping for is when we play those top tier teams, what is going to be the result? How do we look? Because we beat up on a lot of not great teams last year and we took advantage of it, whereas other teams struggled against some of those lower tier teams.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be the consistency against the better teams this year. That'll be interesting to see what they have.
So to keep that consistency, there's going to be some departures between seasons. Did y'all have any departures, and were they key?
So the first departure, was actually two. One of the things that Lutz Van Steel, who, like I said, that's our sporting director, immediately identified some holes or some weak spots in the team. One of which was a complete lack of depth at center defensive mid, where we struggled all year if Jibril Ablam was out. He was hurt. He had COVID. He's on the South African national team, so he was away with national team duty sometimes. We had no real answer for what to do when he was gone. And so the immediate first thing that they did right in the offseason, pretty much when the offseason started, is they traded Jared Stroud and Lucas Bartlett to DC United for Chris Durkin. And Chris Durkin is not a traditional pure defensive midfielder like Blom is. He's more of a box-to-box guy, but he can fill that role. And so he's going to definitely push Blom for the starting spot. And I think he's a guy that's going to provide a little bit more offensive capability. And what it does is it lets Leuven move further up the pitch when Blom isn't playing, and lets Durkin play back a little bit, let Leuven move up a little bit and fill that role that he needs to fill, which is more of the distributor, offensive catalyst, guy who can make crosses and through balls and stuff like that. So getting Durkin was a super huge move for us. But Stroud, he was the fifth leading goal scorer on the team. He did provide a lot of quality minutes, also a lot of yellow cards, but that's just the style that he plays. So those were the two real first departures that made an impact. Bartlett played a lot early on and kind of didn't get a whole lot of minutes late, as other people kind of took his spot. But the biggest one, obviously, is Nico Gioacchini. I mean, he had 10 goals last year. He really filled the need when Klaus went down with his injury, and he's helped stabilize the offense up top. Played very well with Klaus, and then did a good job kind of on his own. Because if you remember, Sam Adeniran was out on loan, and so he wasn't with the team for a while. He was in San Antonio. So when Adeniran's gone on loan and Klaus is all out with an injury, it was pretty much Nico, and he did a really, really good job of filling that that striker position. And so losing him to Como in Serie B, which they have a very legitimate chance to be in Serie A next year. So it's awesome for him. It's a phenomenal career move for him. He has a chance to be playing in one of the best 5 leagues in the world next year. And it's great. So, but he's by far the biggest loss, because when you take 10 teams off any goal, or 10 goals off any team, rather, it's going to make an impact. It's going to matter. And so they need to find production to replace what he gave them.
Well, I guess there's a segue into that, and then Foxtrot, you can follow up. So additions, have y'all made any additions this season? And are those additions any key additions?
Yeah, so I talked about Durkin a little bit already.
In the
I know
DPP you're happy about.
Yeah, for sure. The DPP podcast, I said we've made 3 additions this year, and the biggest one to me is the guy who may not be the full-time starter, who's Durkin. And because him and Blom are either going to be 1A, 1B, or they're going to play together, double pivot. You never know. Right. The other 2 are wingbacks. This team juggled all year what they did at wingback, at left back and right back. On left back, we had Kyle Hebert playing there a lot, who's a natural center back. He'd never played left back before last year. We traded for Anthony Marcanic from Colorado in mid-season, who is, I think they viewed more as a younger developmental piece who wound up having to play a ton just because they didn't have a whole lot of options. Right back, you wind up seeing Jake Nowinski there quite a bit, who played pretty well. You also saw Akil Watts there. Akil Watts is not a wingback by trade. He's more of a midfield type. So this year they went out and got Thomas Totland, who is a Norwegian American. And he's he has every chance, and the right back job is his to seize.
Hmm.
And then Nicholas Dyer. Dyer is a guy who's also a younger player, and he's probably by midseason or before that will be the starting left back. So they identified those two spots as holes or weaker spots as far as depth. And needing talent upgrades, and they go out and they immediately address both of those. And especially Totland Dyer was late getting to camp just because he was getting his, immigration paperwork and all that stuff done, or, not immigration, but what I'm talking about. Work visas and all that stuff done. Totland is already an American, so he has he grew up in Norway, but is a dual citizen essentially. So he comes over and will be a massive upgrade on the right back side. He's looked phenomenal in preseason. He's incredibly fast. He plays very nice through balls, crosses the ball well, and then has the speed to track back. So he can help push up on the press, which they like to do, obviously. But still has the pace to get back when he needs to. And so he's going to be a very impactful player this year. And I think all three of them will be, but Totland, I think, is, if you had to pick one of the three that's going to be like, whoa, I never heard of this guy and he's pretty awesome, it's probably Totland.
Yeah. Fox, follow up?
Like, honestly, you see, like, where teams like St. Louis just, well, they already figured out, like, what to do and if it's successful or not. Granted, like, next season is going to be, like, a matter of, like, staying consistent with, like, the new players or how they're going to roll out. But, like, just, like, doing a handful of pieces, it's sometimes enough, just depending on the team. Like, ours is, like, a different situation because of, like, cap space issues and all that. But I feel like St. Louis is just, like, on the right track and they don't have to really mess around with a lot. So it might be pretty soft for them, but I'm just going to be watching to see that over the course of the year.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is they've set themselves up to have a lot of flexibility in the middle year. They still have a DP slot open that they haven't used. They are just about to free up 2 international slots because today, the day we're recording this, Edward Leuven just got his green card, so that takes him off the international slot. And then our other center back, the Swede Joachim Nielsen, is basically in the final stages of getting his green card. And so that frees up 2 international spots. And so all of a sudden, they're setting themselves up to have a ton of flexibility mid-year. And so I think, when we talk about things that they potentially could do middle year, I think they're pretty happy with where they're at right now. Obviously, I think they're going to let the situation as far as who's going to kind of fill that offensive role that Gioacchini leaves behind. Not necessarily as a striker, but I think they look at guys like Nukvi Thorsen and Celio Pompeu and saying, okay, if one of those guys can really step up or both of them can step up and contribute offensively, then maybe we don't need to do anything. But if we need to, we have all the gunpowder that's dry in the back to do something big if we need to. And that's a nice kind of thing to have in your back pocket is the ability to go out and make a move if you really need one. So I think they're going to let the first half of the season play out, see where they're at. And if they need to make a move, I think they have the capability of doing so.
So, well, perfect. Another segue. So your season and your expectations of your season coming up, is it going to be a repeat or is there going to be a struggle this season? And then Fox, obviously you can follow up, please.
Is there going to be a repeat of finishing first in the West? No.
Sorry. A repeat. All right. All right. Let's just do this. Rapid fire. Was last season an overachieve?
I mean, based on the roster going into the year, probably. Yeah. I mean,
So because I would call it an
expectation.
Yeah. So expectations. I mean, shoot. I guess that's not repeat. Sorry, repeat. Obviously not repeat first. Repeat as into having another good season. Just expecting to make the playoffs and just not shitting the brick, I guess, just per se. Let's just put it that way, I guess.
the thing I've said, and I understand what you're saying. The thing, the way I phrased it is they can have a better year this year and not finish as high.
Right.
If that
Yeah.
makes any sense, right? They
Parity.
can have a better year and not have as many points, right? Because if they play, because it was a weird season in that they had so few ties, right? And
5.
they only had 5 ties, and so that was one of the things. It was kind of hit or miss. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. And then the rare tie we had, it was like a weird feeling. So as far as, is this a playoff team? I think it is absolutely a playoff team. Is it a top 1 or 2 in the West? Maybe, you don't know. And that's hard to judge. I think on the DPP pod, I think I said anywhere between 3 and 6 wouldn't shock me. 4 or 5 would probably be more reasonable to me. I think they're definitely fighting for a home playoff spot, home playoff series in the first round. I don't buy this national narrative that they're going to be 10th or they're barely going to squeak into the playoffs. I just don't see it because, yes, there's been a lot of other teams in the West who have made moves to improve themselves, but a lot of times that stuff takes time, and you can't just throw a bunch of new guys on a team together and go, oh, okay, well, now you're going to figure it out. Now you're all going to be great. Those relationships on and off the field take time to develop. And so they have an opportunity early on, if they can hit the ground running again. As we learned last year, building a buffer of points early is important. And they rode that all season. And so I think realistically, it's a 3 to 4 or 5 in the West to me, because again, they have that capability that a lot of teams don't have, which is they can make a big move in the summer if they needed to. And they didn't really lose anything other than Joaquin out, as far as massive production. And so I think, if they can make up for his loss, then I think they're going to be in a good position. So, yes, was last season overachievement? It has to be called that. Nobody had any expectations for this team at all, including most people here. It was like, hey, if we can squeeze in and fight for a playoff spot, it'd be awesome. So yes, you can call last season an overachievement for sure. But I think this year it's okay. We have a solid team. We brought almost everybody back. We have the core of the team back. We've added pieces where there were clear holes and addressed those immediately. Whereas you see a lot of teams, they'll go out and chase names and they'll get big players and they'll just get, talent. But okay, if you've got 4 midfielders, do you need 3 more? Like, it's things like that sometimes these guys build these teams a little where it's just like, we're just going to compile players. And I think the way they look at it is, okay, here's the deficiencies we had. We're going to get, fill those holes and then go from there. So I think they're doing it the right way.
Yeah. Well, definitely no complaints if they finish first again. So
for sure not. But again, I don't want them to sacrifice the ability to go up and level like we talked about earlier for the playoffs just to finish first in the West. I mean, and yeah. You can have that debate all day long. I don't know how many, if you guys are talking to all the other teams or how many you're doing this year. But, you can talk to Cincinnati about, they're very proud of Supporter Shield and they should be. But again, in the United States, we're playoff driven leagues over here. And so, you can have the debate of what's more important, the cup or the shield. But, in the United States and in North America anyways, these sports leagues are driven by playoffs. And so certainly I think, this year the expectation is, okay, play well in the regular season and then turn it up for the playoffs and see what happens.
Right. It's different. You mentioned it. I kind of wish it would be like Premier League and, Spanish League where you just play everybody twice. But man, that's the season. Let's go. That's it.
What's going to be really interesting is next year, when San Diego shows up and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, are they going to realign? What are they going to do with that? And they're looking for probably 2 more teams at some point in the near future.
Right.
And how that alignment or realignment would work. And if they're going to split it into divisions, that's a conversation for another day. But, everybody here has their kind of opinion and thoughts of, we're in a weird position because a lot of our natural sports rivals in St. Louis from other sports like hockey and baseball and things like that, you're talking about Nashville, Chicago, Chicago especially. St. Louis, Chicago's rivalry anyways, but Chicago's in the East, Nashville's in the East, but so logically sometimes people are like, oh, well, we should be, in a conference with those guys or a division with those guys. Well, then what's that do with our rivalry with our friends to the West in Kansas? You need to keep that as well. So it'll be really interesting next year when if they do talk realignment, how that would work. So.
Yeah, like you said, another day, another story. So
For sure.
let's move on to the final topic. And Fox, please jump in right here for this one because now we're enemies. We don't like you no more, Chris. I'm sorry. Turn the lights down if we got to. But
Frenemies. Frenemies.
frenemies, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. So CCC, man, you qualify for CC expansion year. What a great season! Finish first, win the Western Conference. Unfortunately, knocked out the playoffs early, but you still also qualify for CCC. CCC is great. I don't know. Before we get into the game with us, and I'll let Foxtrot lead off with the game with us after you answer this question. But is CCC something that y'all are going to like be important to y'all? Because the season starts in between our games as well at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of biased right now, or not biased. I'm kind of like 50-50 as well, how I feel about CCC right now, especially with our known injury is Anache Ache's out and Nelson Quinones is out. So our starting 8 and our starting left wing is out. And granted, our left wing, we're going to be okay, but our Hector Herrera, you're not replacing him. So,
Nope.
CCC, man, how do you feel about it?
Before let me make a quick comment on Nachi Ache because that's a guy who, as before we came into the league, and with the MLS, a guy who I despised, Mexican national team and being a USMNT fan, hated that guy, and in watching him really a lot last year. So much respect for him. Like he's such a wonderful player and a team leader and completely kind of turned around on my thoughts on him. So it's a disappointment that he's hurt and I won't be able to play right away. And so that's rough for you guys, but it's also rough for just neutrals, casuals who like watching that guy play. So as far as when the CCC, I honestly don't know what the kind of enthusiasm is here. I think, any soccer here is going to be met with enthusiasm. A lot of the early season stuff, I think people were like, okay, well, we're going to have a game in February. The weather here tends to not be enjoyable in that early in the year. But next week's actually supposed to be really nice. Like we might be pushing like 50s, which here is unheard of in February.
Comfortable.
And so, so I think if the weather is nice, I think it'll be a pretty hyped up atmosphere, just to get the team back, just to get City Park back rolling again and the experience, and the block parties and all the stuff around it. As far as the competition itself, I think it's one of those things where, City, if you look last year, did not play well in the US Open Cup, did not play at all well in Leagues Cup. Actually, got their doors blown off by Club America and went over to Columbus and sat through a long rain delay and just looked kind of disinterested. So, and it's the one thing you can turn around and say, well, they didn't play well in Leagues Cup, but they played both champions. They played Club America and they played Columbus. And that's kind of a lame excuse, but it is what it is. So it would be nice if they played better in a competition because they didn't play well in either one of them last year. Chicago knocked them out of the US Open Cup. Ooh. So I think, in this Houston match, much like you guys it's a different situation because you guys are struggling with injuries. What we're struggling with is not really a struggle because it's a long-term benefit is Leuven and Nielsen, like I talked about before. Leuven just got back to town today. You have to go home to get your green card. So he had to go back to Germany and then turn around and come all the way back over here. And so they've been out of training camp. So I would be, Nielsen's not going to play. There's no way he's going to play in that game. And Leuven I would be very surprised if he does anything more than maybe a midway through the second half sub type situation. And so, we're not going to have everybody, we're not going to have our full roster ready. They're not going to play Nicholas Dyer, the guy I talked about, who's going to be our new left back, the young kid, the European. So he's not going to be ready because he was late getting to camp. And so there's, we're still dealing. The only real long-term injury we have right now is Rasmus Holm coming back from a sports hernia, which he had operated on the off season. So that's the one guy we're missing from an injury perspective, but we're pretty healthy other than that. So I think you're going to see Klaus. I think you'll see, probably Klaus and Deneron. You'll see a lot of the guys you're used to seeing with us. And I think it'll be a match that They're going to look to take advantage of the atmosphere being, good weather and excited, and everybody's back to the city park. And so I think we'll be up for it. But how well they play, again, these early games, you never know. Like it's always going to be a struggle. So it might, last year was a unique situation in that we ran into a bunch of teams early that looked like they had no idea what they were doing. And I certainly don't think Houston's that case. You guys have a very good head coach, as we know here. And so, I think it's something where it'll be an interesting matchup to see how seriously teams are taking this, and how much they're going to play guys early when they're just getting their minutes up and just getting their fitness up. So you're liable to see a lot of subs.
And I think for me, it's just like for Houston, it's just a matter of figuring the starting core without Achache, because I think we have like the pieces we can try to figure something out without him, but we're still talking about like missing Achache for potentially several months, and that's a big piece. Piece we're gonna be missing. Obviously, the team MVP. There's not much to say about that, and just to like see what we're gonna roll out with, especially with over the next two legs, if there's like any adjustments. I feel like that's gonna pretty much dictate how we're gonna try to play like on the road, especially, and the approach we want to take in the first game to open the MLS season afterwards. So I think that's gonna matter, and for us, it's also gonna be like who's ready to step up, especially on the road.
Right. Let's remind everybody we have a MLS opening day game in between our stupid series. I don't call it stupid. Sorry, my bad. In between our series.
I think what's going to be really interesting when it comes to the specific matchup, especially the first one, is one of the criticisms of City last year was that we couldn't play against low blocks. We couldn't play against teams that were going to make us possess the ball. They've been working on that in training camp, working on ways to beat that kind of style that people started to play against them later on in the season. And I certainly think that, we've seen that in training camp. There's been multiple occasions where, it's like, whoa, they're building out of the back instead of just going direct. So it's been very interesting to watch kind of the progression of how the team has played in the preseason, and the things that they're trying to implement. And so there's players they have on the roster that are going to get minutes, like a Celio Pompeu, who can beat people off the dribble, who is one of those guys they're going to rely on when teams play tight defensively on him. And so, I think, when you're on the road, you tend to play more, defensive, and you tend to try to get a point, or in this case, try to get a win. And so it'll be interesting to see if anything kind of translates from preseason into the way they play against Houston, because I would expect Houston, you guys are not typically known for trying to run up and down the field on people and be super dynamic offensively. So it'll be interesting to see that if Houston plays that kind of counterattacking, play solid defensively, what City does other than just kind of bash your head into the wall saying, hey, we're just going to keep trying the same things over and over. Because the longer the season went last year, it's not that their style doesn't work. It's just you have to have other ways to beat people, and so it'll be interesting to see if Houston has an excellent coaching staff, as we know, in St. Louis, obviously. So, I think it'll be a really interesting matchup, and it's always a clash of styles when they play. It's the 2 games last year, we're just the beginning of that, and we're going to play each other 4 times this year at least. And so, I think familiarity breeds contempt, but it also breeds knowledge of how the other guys play, and you have to find ways to defeat what their plan is, obviously. So, without Ache, then that's something that unfortunately on your guys' side, in your preseason, I'm interested to see how have they looked. Like, have they found he's so important. Like, you can have an MVP in Acosta and guys like that, but he's as important as anybody is to any team. And how have they looked in trying to adapt to life without him? How'd they look?
Interesting. So it's going to be a curious CCC between us and you, St. Louis and Houston. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, we did not want to draw you to begin with. We wanted to draw a team where I wanted to use my passport. So that's what a lot
cool.
of That's what a lot of people were wishing for. So sorry we had to play each other in the friggin' first round, and you got Columbus looming. Well, potentially Columbus looming in the background, and then Tigres after that. So Jesus, what a road we gonna have in the CCC
For sure.
to begin with. It's just friggin' nuts. But Chris, as we finish up, Andres, do you have any final questions for the CCC or anything relative to the show before I finish up and ask Chris his final question?
No, yeah, like I was kind of disappointed with the draw because I was hoping for like an international opponent, and there's no like disrespect for St. Louis really, because that's pretty much like what a lot of the competition is all about, just to get to face like other teams in other countries.
Yeah,
For like,
sure.
Other than that, like it is what it is now. We're gonna face St. Louis, and like the next up next is just gonna be like whoever's gonna play Columbus is gonna be again staying here, and I'm sure like whoever like wins that's gonna go against Tigres, so it's gonna be insane.
Yeah. Our perspective on it was the same way. It's no disrespect to Houston, but we have teams we've never played. If you think about it that way, last year was season 1. We have teams in the East we've never played, and there's teams that after this year we still wouldn't have played, which is weird to me that we wouldn't go through the whole rotation. But yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that. Oh man, that would have been cool to go to some other country or play some team you've never heard of, or travel a little bit. But again, the draw is what it is, and the competition is what it is, and so it's something where I think we're surprised to be here. If you would have asked us last year, would you think you're going to be in CCC next year? Nope. And so I think definitely it's a situation where we're just going to enjoy being here, and however far they can make it, great. Does it really affect the overall season? Not really. I mean, if they play well and Houston beats them, it is what it is. If they win against, if they can win a series against Houston, again, are they going to make a run 3-4 rounds in? Who knows? But, I think it's more of just, hey, this is something that is a cool competition. And hopefully we're in it more, more often than just this season. And we'll get to experience playing some of those other clubs like you guys talked about. So.
I can deal with it more if we competitively lose. If we get our butts kicked, then I'm sad and disappointed. But also, you're going to have opening day in between, so that's going to have some judgmental aspects into it at the same time. But, Chris, thank you very much. As we end the show today, man, thank you very much for coming on. Like you said, we're frenemies now. We kind of met via Elsewhere Designated Players podcast, and now we're here. So I hope that we can continue this journey on in the future and meet up again, and talk about it in the future. Like you said, we're going to be playing each other many a times, and so we'll build the future. But as I segue to that, Chris, St. Louis soccer news, man. So tell us about that if you want to give a shout out to anybody or anything. And then we're going to hang up. And then the last thing I'm going to ask for you is, you got any words you'd like to say to SKC? But St. Louis soccer news first, please, sir.
Yeah. So what the website is basically just a collation of links and information about soccer in St. Louis. Soccer is one of the staple things here, and is so important to this city. Going back decades and decades and decades. And, one of the things that was interesting to me last year when we got started is I'm a content junkie. I like reading articles about soccer. I like listening to podcasts. I like doing all that stuff. And, one of the interesting things about St. Louis is we currently have 19 fan-made city podcasts. There's a couple of the radio stations do. There's one the team puts out that's the official one, but there's 19 podcasts here in St. Louis that are solely focused on city. We also have a couple here that are not focused on MLS at all. They cover the European leagues. And so, it's a major hub for content creation. And so when I started the website, it was basically just to throw all that stuff on and one single place where people could go, and if they were interested in finding out all the different podcasts or YouTube creators or people write articles and stuff. And when I started that and kind of launched out in the wild, then the fan base or the people who responded were essentially like, well, if you're going to do all that stuff for city, why not all the local colleges that we have, because there's a ton here, and why not the high schools, and why not cover the USO2 teams that we have here and the semi-pro teams. And so it just has snowballed into this compilation of stuff, and people who have merch, local merch companies, and just all kinds of stuff. And so it's really just a place for people in St. Louis to go, where if they're trying to find something related to soccer in St. Louis, be it pro, semi-pro, youth, high school, anything, where they can hopefully find it there. And I always joke that we even have the Sherwin-Williams paint code colors for city. If you want to paint your basement city red, that's an awful lot of city red. But anyways, that we even have those on there. So it's all kinds of stuff. And so really, it's not about me or what I do. It's more of putting the focus on the people like you guys who are actually taking the time to create content and do podcasting and all that stuff. So I love highlighting those people, and occasionally people are nice enough to ask me on, and I love doing it. It's great. But I think it's more important to feature the people who are putting in the work every week like you guys do. And so that's really what the website's designed to do. It's to put the eyes on the people who are, producing all this stuff and all this great content. And one of the things that I'm going to do this year, which is hopefully going to be pretty interesting, is a know your enemy. You talked about us being frenemies. And so before every match, I'm going to highlight on the website, like, hey, okay, we're playing Houston. Okay, here's some Houston podcasts. Here's some, websites, blogs, things like that you guys might want to check out, because like I said, it's always good to get the other side's perspective. You don't want to just get, the homer view all the time, because sometimes you need that outside perspective of what other people think of your team to just balance it. And so, it'll be interesting. And I've already kind of hit up some people on Reddit and things like that to say who are some of the, podcasts and who are some of the article writers that you like to read about various teams. And so it's going to be a little more of expanding that. But yeah, that's basically what the website is. It's just a resource hub for St. Louis soccer. Now the second part of your question is, do we have anything to say, or do I have anything to say to our friends from the West in that state over one? Not really. I mean, they like to talk, or they like to talk, and they certainly have a rich history in MLS. But soccer has existed longer in this country than just MLS, and so I think they need to be reminded of that sometimes. Is that there was soccer in this country before MLS, and we can all read articles and read the history books as far as where soccer was important in this country prior to MLS coming. So, and they know that. So, I don't really have any that much to say to them, other than maybe, good luck for the season. So.
I love it, bro. Foxtrot, any final words, sir?
No, I think I don't want to take credit. I like this closing. That was great.
Absolutely, guys. So, Chris from St. Louis Soccer News, Andres, Dynamic Foxtrot. Thank y'all, the Houston fans, the fans from St. Louis who might be listening to this show. I hopefully listen to this show to get a little inside information from a little bit of us. We didn't give too much information from our side, but hey, it was fun getting to know our opponent. Thank y'all for joining Instant Ramen. This was part 1 of this episode tonight. Part 2 will be with SKC coming up shortly. I'm sure they'll have a rebuttal for Chris. You'll just have to listen to hear what they have to say. But, again, thank y'all. And as I like to do, or as like we like to do, H is up. Peace out.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Appreciate it. Welcome back to Instant Ramen. All right, that was the St. Louis side of things. We're now back, so we got St. Louis for CCC, but in between the away game and the home game we have with St. Louis, we do have SKC for the home opener, which is still a bitter rivalry to us. I don't know how they feel about it, But you know what? Let's just ask Chad. Chad from SKC, bro. How you doing? Introduce yourself. Tell us you about your pod and all that good stuff, bro.
Hey y'all. So yeah, I am Chad Smith. I am the host or co-host, I should say, of For the Glory KC podcast. We kind of husband and wife thing. I go deep. She keeps it casual. And I'm one of the editors at kcsoccerjournal.com. So I'm just a mile deep on all things sporting Kansas City. And as far as a rivalry, I thought the Dynamo, like we didn't take them seriously for a few years. And then that may have bit us a little bit in 2023 because things turned around a little bit for y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, always fun to play. You know the locals, and then of course being in Texas and Texas being so big now with the ugly enemies over to our left over here from Houston. Like Jesus, now we got two in-state rivalries plus y'all right there. And I've been to your stadium once. I had a good time. I hung out with some of the Cauldron before the game, and then got to enjoy the game in my seat. And then did my thing and stayed at the hotel literally right next door. Hung out at the casino. So I had my good time. It's fun. I could put the airport next to it next time, please. So we'll see about that. But last season, man. So last season was kind of a downer and an upper for y'all, if I'm not mistaken, man. You kind of started off having a poor season. I don't know if it was because of injuries or lack of depth, and then you just kind of just went on this run and just enjoyed yourselves and pushed yourselves into the playoffs. Man, tell us about last season.
Yeah, definitely a tale of two seasons. I think literally the worst start in MLS history. 10 games, 3 draws, 7 losses, only 3 goals in 10 games. Oh, it was a nightmare. Like probably the most listened to podcast, and everybody's like, what's happening? Tell us what's wrong with this team. And yeah, a lot of injuries. I think at one point there was like 7 starters out during that stretch. That'll do you in a little bit. Polito wasn't back yet. Kindo wasn't back yet. And then May 1st on, best in the West, took every ounce of everything they had to inch their way into the playoffs. And then, man, uncalled handball away from a Western Conference final, right? And, terrible tactics. We also had a bad strategy in that game as well. So I won't just blame the handball.
What handball?
Wait, you and Carol Ann Chenard aren't familiar with the rules of the VAR.
I don't know what you're talking about. No. Yeah, that's one of those controversial parts of the game that it's going to take on forever and forever and forever and forever and forever. And that would have tied the game, and there's no telling where the game would have went from there and all that good stuff. But yeah, there's no friggin' telling. So definitely, that's just something like, what can you do about the referees? There's nothing you can do about it. They're not going to get better. They may only get worse. so it'll be curious. But damn, we definitely enjoyed our playoff game against you. I know Foxtrot enjoyed it for sure. I'm sure he's got some comments on your season last year and the playoff game.
No, the one thing, like that. Just watching it as a neutral, I particularly just remember the turnaround for Sporting KC. Just watching them, not even as a Dynamo fan, but just watching them as a neutral specifically. Like I really feel like every time like a team just like goes on a poor run, I feel bad for them. Not because of a direct rival, but just like a real soccer fan. Like just being in that position of seeing your team not do anything for like so many weeks, it must be disheartening, but the main thing for me is just seeing them being in the middle of that mud and like out of nowhere, just like be the hottest team in MLS. At one point, it was like, what is going on? Because I specifically remember like just being at a bar, like not because of soccer, but just being at a bar with like friends, and they had uh the Seattle game against Sporting KC, like in Seattle. I look at it and they're just like beating Seattle like on the road, like in the middle of this like insanely bad run. I'm like, what's this? And it's like I've always seen like Peter Vermees do his thing like for like almost like forever now, like a century now, and
give or
like,
take, yeah.
Like give or take, like just being in the middle of this bad run, I feel like he can probably figure something out because obviously he's dealing with like his own stuff in the team, and and just see this game against Seattle, and like every single game after that's kind of like, okay, I guess yeah, he definitely figured something out, because like it's okay. What is this?
Have you all heard the story of like what happened between that 10th game where they hadn't won and then the win in Seattle? Did you hear like this like background of this?
No.
Not the full thing, no.
Okay, so I'll give you like an abbreviated version of it. So one of the owner's kid is kind of in charge now. So one of the Illig's kids, Mike, and he was reaching out to players, like veterans on the team, saying like basically should they fire Peter Vermees? Like, is Vermees the problem? And the players stood up for him and said no, he's not the problem. And then they decided to do this players only retreat at this like ranch that, they're billionaires that own the Sporting KC. And they send him to this ranch, and he tells, Johnny Russell and all these guys, burn the place to the ground if you have to. And they have like a heart to heart. We still don't know like all the ins and outs. We know that like they're drinking, they go out. This is like midweek before they fly to Seattle. And, I don't even know if some of the players, they're definitely not old enough to be drinking. Who knows? I'm sure they were just, having water. But some sort of campfire shenanigans happen, and we still don't really know. And they said they'll tell us someday what that was.
No.
But I don't know if you saw, every time they would score a goal, they would get together, they'd go arm in arm, and they would do this dance that they did at the campfire. And that was the explosion, right? They did that. And then, they were still, it was funny. They were the best in the West. But one of my buddies said it best. It never really felt like they were the best team in the West from May 1st on, because they just go and like lose to Miami's backups out of nowhere when no one was in town because everybody was on international duty. So it didn't feel like we were the best team until, we knocked St. Louis out of the playoffs. Very satisfying way to keep our season going.
It has to be very satisfying defeating your rival. Granted, you hadn't played the guys until twice that year or three times that year, so they didn't become rival until you actually played them this year. But they got to be a bitter rival now, right? Are they?
There's this history between Kansas City and St. Louis. Like I'm not this. I don't care. Like in terms of like I want to beat them in soccer, of course. But there's like a city hate. I go to St. Louis. I have a good time. It's a fun city. There's cool stuff to do over there. But yeah, I want St. Louis City to lose to Sporting Kansas City all the time. I was even saying when we were terrible, I was like, if we can just beat St. Louis in the games, that would be a redeeming quality of this season. If we can just not lose to them, because God, losing to the new kids in town, it was brutal losing to them early in the season. So getting our sweet revenge in the playoffs was very nice. We have that forever.
No, it was like us playing you. We tied and then lost, and then get you in the playoffs, and we get that freaking win to put us in there, and then we do nothing with it. But your season though. So like you said, you had ups and downs. You had players here and there. You had injuries. You had all this and that. Who were your standouts that propelled y'all to that realm of the playoffs?
I would say, obviously, Alan Pulido. It's hard to ignore him, right? He finally gets healthy. He comes back from missing all of 2022, and he's in the Golden Boot race for a while during the season. Got a little cold towards the end and kind of flamed out. Nobody's catching Denny Bouanga. That guy was ridiculous. But so Pulido, hard to ignore him. You got your constant in Daniel Shalhoub. He's just such a quality MLS player, right? He's not gonna, he was like in the MVP race a few years ago, and then he was like terrible the next year, but now he seems to have found his consistency level. He's good for a lot of minutes. He's going to get a handful of goals and assists. Good player. We're going to miss Gotti Kinda. That's one that I'm kind of sad about. He got healthy, and they were on a run when he rejoined the team, and I think he only had like 8 starts or something crazy like during the regular season, but he was starting in the playoffs when it mattered. And we're going to miss that guy. But maybe Jake Davis, underlying secret right back of the future. Maybe U.S. men's national team Jake Davis. Could we see that? The right back position's wide open.
Down. That's Griffin Dorsey's spot, sir.
I do like Griffin Dorsey. I mean, I got to root against him, but I like Griffin Dorsey. He seems like a good player.
Maybe they can both just go together and take over that right spot for the U.S. national team, because right now it sucks.
Yeah, move Serginho to left, and then have him and Jedi over there on the left, and Jake Davis and Griffin Dorsey on the right. And so we've got it worked out. Let's put us in charge here.
Right, Griffin Dorsey and Jake Davis on the right. That's perfect. Sounds great. No. All right. So, you kind of mentioned it's a segue. You kind of mentioned departures. Did you have any other departures? Anybody that was key departures to the team?
So Gotti is the big name, right? Because he's a designated player, and they haven't and won't be signing a new one before the season, according to. I actually just got to talk to Peter the other day and said that. As far as others, no one that plays a lot, but a couple of club legends in Roger Espinoza and Graham Zusi, both gone. Espinoza seems to have kind of low key retired, but not really put any statement out. We've seen nothing from Zusi, so they weren't playing a ton, right? They were in the twilight of their career, but they're legends. They're going to be on the wall at Children's Mercy Park, and it will be an emotional letdown. I think there's probably like casual fans out there that don't yet realize that they're gone, that these legends are not going to be on the team when opening day rolls around and we're down visiting the Dynamo.
Damn. Fox, follow up?
Like, honestly, for me, like, I also remember last year where we pretty much just recorded like an Instant Ramen separately with Mike Q, and I think he also writes for Casey Soccer Journal. And that was pretty much right before Kansas City like turned things around for the year. So like it was like right in the middle of it. And the main thing that we just kept going back and forth is just like, this is not a bad team. Like it's solid on paper. Like it's for some reason they just had like they're in the middle of it, and next thing you know, they're just like on this insane run. And the one thing for me that I've noticed him from him specifically, because I also follow him on Twitter and just like try to like follow a lot of soccer people, is just like maybe they haven't like addressed much of the holes, which I feel like can just be answered in the next segment. But I feel like for them it's gonna be like it could be just be a matter of finding the right roles for the people that are coming in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm looking at the roster, and I don't know if this is where y'all are heading to the next segment. It's very top heavy. The starters look amazing. Like I'm a little nervous about center back at times. Like, you know, we're a year older because they basically brought everybody back besides the guys we mentioned. And then it's a lot of young guys on the bench, a lot of inexperience on the bench. So can any of those guys step up and fill these gaps? And then, you know, we've got that lingering designated player spot out there that they can still spend and use to, you know, maybe if somebody goes down hurt or you see a clear deficiency in the roster, you make a move and solidify things. Because if anything, Sporting Kansas City showed that you can be hot garbage for 10 games and still make the playoffs because they let every team basically into the playoffs. So just be hot at the right time, I guess.
Well, you know, and that's what was the next segment, was additions to the team this year. Who have you signed? Are any of those additions key? Is there somebody you're eyeing? Is there somebody you're rooming? Is there somebody that there's a position of need that you're expecting the team to fill?
So it's almost an identical roster to last year. It's insane. Like the turnover is so low. They have only signed 4 guys, none of which do I expect to be starters. You got Zorhan Basong, a backup left back. Alenis Vargas, who came from our 2 team. He's going to be a forward, jack of all trades up there, mostly right wing. Russell's backup. Memo Rodriguez, a name that may be familiar to you gentlemen.
No, I'm just kidding.
Which again, backup for probably Eric Tommy, and then Ryan Sheway, our first round pick, who's going to be our 3rd string goalkeeper. So literally no starters, probably nobody that's really even realistically competing to be a starter. So you're just hoping that maybe Vargas, like I liked him on the 2s. He was really fun on there, and they played really well in MLS Next Pro last year. He's only 20. You never know. He just started playing soccer at 16. So go from that to a few years later to be, you know, on a first team MLS roster, not a bad rise there. Yeah. But we're looking at a lot of young guys that you haven't really seen too much. Actually, you know, a guy you all saw last year, Stephen Afrifa. I don't know if you remember in the U.S. Open Cup, he had a howler. He should have scored, and he missed. And as his like only start, I think, of the entire season, he mostly was with the 2s. But he's looking pretty good in preseason. There's talk that he might be breaking through. So a lot of young guys that somebody's going to have to take a leap, because these old guys can't play 2,500 minutes each. They got to spread it out. At least we don't have to worry about CCC or anything like that to grind us into dust like you all do.
Yeah.
Fart noise. Nah, that's what we kind of were figuring out last episode. I think no matter what we do against St. Louis, we're going to go with the same roster, I mean, the same starting lineup, and play against y'all. So yeah, you're going to have an edge against us. You're not going to have a game though that in play, and we'll be in 3 days rest, 3 days rest with a game in hand, and the season starting to go. So it'll be interesting. So with the season upcoming, man, what are SKC's expectations for this upcoming season, and can they repeat and make the playoffs again? And then Fox, you want to follow up?
So I would say if they don't make the playoffs, that's a pretty big fail, right? In Major League Soccer, when you let 60-something% of your teams into the playoffs, like you have to make the playoffs. That's
Of
the
course.
bar. And as far as expectations, I mean, if you ask Peter Vermees, I think he'd tell you that the goal is to win trophies. We're going to win MLS Cup, things like that. But then I think realistically, if they could fight for like a top 4 spot, a home playoff game, I think that would be relatively successful. I think they just got to start a lot hotter because you can't have another. That's basically 2 bad years in a row where they started off the season and 2022 they never quite recovered. They got super close, but Tommy Agata showed up. They almost made that run, but didn't quite pull it off. So I think if you get top 4, you can be happy with that. Really, my biggest hope is be smart, get some young guys some minutes, be hot when you need to be hot, which is what they were last year. They just kind of laid an egg against the Dynamo there. Because again, I want to blame the handball, but in reality, it was a terrible tactical plan from Peter Vermees. Let's give the Houston Dynamo, who are great at possession and passing the ball around, let's let them have the ball like we did against St. Louis, which works against St. Louis, but doesn't work against this Dynamo team. So
Right.
Yeah, just one thing I just wanted to say, like it just goes back to what I said initially, and I feel like for them, like it's like the lack of competition could just be like an advantage, obviously for the regular season, but like obviously when the summer hits, it's gonna be like a different story with like Leagues Cup and Open Cup and all that, and yeah, like really for them, I can really like see how this is gonna turn out because I feel like the best like what can happen is just like to make the playoffs again. Like I don't know, like I doubt it's gonna be like the same as last year. Like I mean, it would be incredible. Like if they just like get a poor start and just like even improve. But like at the same time, with like the way they're set up, like I feel like we should trust Peter Vermees more. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not trust the guy, right? He's got an incredible track record until this like recent like downturn. So if you look at the years they were bad, it's just horrific injuries to designated players, and we kept some of the same DPs. Polito's older and he's on a new 3-year deal. If he stays healthy, I mean, this team, the sky's the limit, right? I think he's one of the probably top 5 center forwards in the entire league, but that has been a real problem for him in his career. Last year, he was healthy. Once he came back from his injury from the prior year that he missed the whole year, he was pretty good the rest of the year. So that plus some other health, that's really what it comes down to, right? You need to get lucky. You need to be healthy. With the parity of Major League Soccer, you're never going to be night and day above these other teams, unless I guess your name is Inter Miami and you can go spend $9 million on a 4th U22 player. I don't know what the rules are anymore.
Right.
They're building a nursing home over there. So, all right, Chad. Now that we've done all this good stuff, now opening day is upon us. Okay, we've played St. Louis. We're now at home, February 24th, 7:30. Hell in the Shell. SKC's coming into town, ready to go. What are you looking forward to? What are you kind of expecting? What kind of start? And I don't expect you to say you're going to come out and kick our ass, or we're going to come out and kick your ass. Just what is the mood of the fans and the obviously the podsters right now for how they're feeling with preseason and going into the season?
I think the people that I interact with a lot on social media are like the most negative people. So they're all very concerned that this team is bad and worse than they were. I think they probably are mildly worse unless some of these young players step up. But the hope is that happens. I think statistically, this is when I want to play the Dynamo, right? You got no Ache, no Nelson Quiones. You're playing back-to-back CCC games around it. You don't have to go to Houston in the summer. Like usually you got a road game in Houston when it's, I don't know, the 100% humidity or whatever it is down there. You guys said Hell in the Shell. I didn't know that you were allowed to put fans in your stadium. I haven't noticed that there are a lot of people on the maybe the camera's just facing the wrong side. I'm giving y'all grief, but it doesn't ever seem quite full. I don't even know if in the playoffs it looked full. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
All 3,300 of us defeated you in the playoffs last season.
Fair enough.
Bring it. And I was there for it.
All in good fun. But yeah, I think this is the time you want to play the Dynamo, right? They should be a little beat up. They should be you don't have to play in the elements as much. I think if you don't come out at least with a result in the first game, that's a pretty disappointing way to start the season. And they need to get off on a much better, hotter start than these last couple seasons. Or maybe Peter's seat will actually be hot. Although, for the record, he signed a 5-year extension last year before all that bad stuff happened. And it just starts this year. This is the first year of his extension. So we'll see. They probably aren't going to pay him for 5 seasons just to go away. So let's hope he gets it right. And you don't want to hope. I hope they get it right.
So he'll be 103 after the end of this extension.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah. Fox, any follow up, brother?
Yeah, my full expectation is that we're just gonna have like the same starting lineup from the first leg of the Conca Champions, and like it's been like that pattern like last year. We just like expected Ben Olsen to like just make adjustments around the Open Cup or Leagues Cup, and he usually makes those rotations when needed. Like if there's like an injury or players are trying to rest, but like we've seen so many times like the same starting lineup. Granted, this time it's gonna be different because Achach is not gonna be available, and for us it's gonna be the question of who's gonna be ready to step up for that role. Like we do have the pieces, but you're pretty much just asking potentially either Coco or the Seva to provide all the goal scoring opportunities for everyone and play as amazing as Achachi did last year, the team MVP. So it's a hard task. So there's gonna be adjustments for sure, just to like try addressing that. And I feel like that it's just gonna be like the same way we played last year. So like if Sporting KC can stop that, like they've already like attempted that last year. I feel they can definitely get a result, but at the same time, like this is gonna be our first home game of the year, so the team's gotta be in high spirits there.
So what do you think? Memo Rodriguez comes on around the 70th minute, game-winning goal for Sporting KC in his debut.
He'll hit the crossbar.
Yeah,
he'll hit the crossbar. Yeah. But he will get a warm welcome. He will get a warm welcome. That's for sure. He is one of our homegrowns. We do enjoy him. We do appreciate him. We don't need him back. We're happy that he's doing something else. We wish he can find a home. So he's just making the rotations and moving around right now. But so we wish him the best. But yeah, team's changing and we don't need him right now. So crossbar challenge. That's it. He's not scoring against us. And if he does, he better run out the stadium when that 90th minute whistle goes off. But man, Chad, hey. This was a good episode, bro, and I just want to say thank you for coming on and thank you for being patient with us and trying to get to you tonight, as it was a little difficulty starting the show on our correct time as we promised. So I want to again thank you for that and thank you for being your patience. Man, if you want to tell us again about yourself and your podcast, and if you want to shout out anybody or hit up anybody, if anybody's going to be listening to this episode from your side of the world, and then give us a prediction and then, knock us out. And then Fox, you want to follow up and then we'll get the hell out of here, bro.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys for having me on. Predictions, I'm going to say, realistically, Sporting, they're looking a little rough in preseason. The only teams they've beat are a college team and Miami FC, a USL team. So I'm not going to expect them to come out on fire. I'd be happy with the draw on the road. That's the goal, right? Win at home, draws on the road. Yeah. And but that said, the Dynamo should be pretty susceptible. season prediction, I'm saying 4th. I'm hoping for 4th. I might be optimistic on me. Yeah, Woo is probably right. And then as far as where you can get to me, I'd say the easiest thing, go follow me on Twitter at play490. Soccer match is 90 minutes long. That should be easy to find. And then you'll be able to find all the podcast, the KC Soccer Journal, all that good stuff from there.
No, yeah, I guess like the last thing I have to say is just like we probably have like the most underrated rivalry in MLS, and a lot of people don't recognize that, which is unfortunate because like especially like in the middle of the 2010s, that thing was just like an insane rivalry, and obviously things may not be the same right now, just because of the disparity of each team, like year in and year out. But at the same time, just looking at each team, like I feel like we play each other like 8 times a year, like for some reason, and we get matched up like every single time in the Open Cup and the playoffs. We manage to go through, but with all these competitions, I feel like it's just a matter of time until we get played like 20 times a year or something like that. But yeah, I just feel like more people should watch this rivalry in particular.
I agree. I have hated memories of the early 2010s and then fond memories of knocking y'all out in 2013 on their way to our title. So, yeah, it's a rekindling. I think it's better for both teams when we're good and we can press each other and get better results out of each team. So it's boring when one team is way better than the other. So I like that there's some parity now. Ben Olsen, who would have guessed? That's the guy that would have turned things around for the Dynamo. It looked like a boring hire, and hey, I think 2023 pretty successful first year.
100%,
that was hard to sell, and it worked out. So, but I told you that one time I went to SKC. I just remembered as you were. I forget what made you click, and I looked up. I was like, "Oh yeah, bro." So had to make a little exchange with somebody. Actually, they approached me and asked for a scarf because I was there by myself. I had like 3 scarves on. I was supporting my Dynamo loud and proud, and I guess he spotted me during the game. And when the end of the game, he came running down and was like, "Hey, let's exchange scarves." So one of your fans was nice. Obviously, this is one from I guess day one. This is what it looks like, the design. But appreciate your fans for sharing their scarf, and I'm enjoying that collection, kind of like you see with Foxtrot in the background. But they're all orange; those are all Dynamo. There's a U.S. Open Cup one in there somewhere, just to remind y'all that we won that cup right there, title winners. I think we eliminated y'all from that too. Sorry. All right.
It's true. It's true. You did.
All right.
I want to get to. I want to get to Houston sometime too. I've never been to Houston. We made a road trip to Dallas last year. I have to tell you, if I never go to Dallas again, it'll be too soon. So the fans, they were not. I wasn't impressed. I'm sure you aren't Dallas fans here, but like they weren't into the game. They weren't interested in it. Like the city, the traffic was a freaking nightmare. Like I was not impressed with Dallas. And I always heard about, this like Southern hospitality. I don't know if Texas is not really considered the South, but I think we're very nice here in the Midwest. And I did not get that hospitality in Dallas. So I welcome the road fans, even St. Louis, even though we hate them already. We're very respectful of them. And I appreciate the energy they brought across the state. So I look forward to getting down to Houston sometime, and maybe we can exchange scarves.
We got a simple answer for Dallas. You didn't even make it to Dallas. You made it to Frisco, which was north of Dallas. You don't even get into the damn city. You have to take a toll road just to get to the stupid stadium. The stadium looks like a high school stadium that's sunk in and looks like it's next to a hospital. So you think it's hospital from the outside. Then you get inside and you're like, what is this high school concert little crap little thing? And then their fans, like, I don't even care about their fans. I don't pay attention to their fans because we got those other guys from the left to us that wear green that annoy the crap out of us right now. So we got to worry about them a little bit more. So they're hated. But, I hope you can come down to Houston and enjoy. It should be okay as long as you stay on your side of the stadium. Not your side of the stadium, but on that side of the stadium. And I'll come say hi to you and all that good stuff. We'll shake our hands and talk and all that good stuff. But yeah, I love going to away days, man. I don't know what the
Same.
big deal is sometimes with the supporters, man. Get away from us. You can't be here. You're too close. But
I will say, besides Dallas, I've had incredible road experience. I've been to a lot of stadiums. I mean, the LA stadiums. The LAFC, their 3252 is pretty rowdy, but they were very welcoming. People saying nice things to us in the tunnel underneath the seats and stuff. Colorado, Seattle, never had a bad experience. Dallas was weirdly the worst experience. And my wife and I have this theory that they don't know the name of their own team because their chant sounds like Dallas FC instead of FC Dallas. I think they don't know the name of their team. It's kind of sad.
I think they're just saying burn. They're just saying Dallas burn.
Okay, they're still confused. It's the 90s still.
Yeah. I don't know what the heck's going on over there, man. But thank God you haven't gone to Austin yet, or as we like to call that. So Dallas and Aston is our rivals around here. So you're lucky you're just SKC.
Fair enough. But maybe we will earn some hate from you all getting our revenge games this year. We'll see.
Yeah, no, you're all good. I think y'all are just a friendly rivalry. We have fun with y'all. Y'all the originals. You'll be our original rival, and you'll probably be their rival for the longest of time. But again, Chad, thank you very much. I guess that's the end of this Instant Ramen episode. We had a double tonight. One with St. Louis, one with SKC. So we want to thank y'all for being attentive for this long tonight. Appreciate it, and I hope y'all all learned something about St. Louis and SKC tonight. And you know what? They're our opponents, so we wish them luck unless that whistle blows against us, and then it's forget about it. But again, guys, as we like to do, we throw our H's up and say thank you and peace out, and we'll see you next time.